What happens when a self-made hotel CEO goes undercover at his own buffet and sees trays of untouched food dumped straight into the trash? Caleb Everett leaned back in his chair, staring through the tall office windows as the city lights flickered on. He didn't hear the voice of his assistant until she repeated herself. "Caleb, the quarterly reports in your inbox. Locations 5 and 6 are underperforming." Caleb nodded but didn't look at the screen. "Which one's the buffet-style hotel?" "The one with the rooftop dining, location 6, she said. "The one in Riverway. You bought it from the Holland family 6 years ago," he remembered. It had been a mess back then, outdated, overpriced, and poorly run. He'd put in money, new management, and trusted the updates would take care of the rest. Apparently not. "I'll check it out myself," Caleb said. "Want me to call the district manager?" "No. I want the truth, not a performance." He decided to go in as a new temp worker through a staffing agency they used. With 7 hotels across the state, most of the staff had never met the owner, and he'd never personally visited this one. He shaved his beard, dyed his hair darker, and wore glasses. In a gray uniform with a fake name tag that read Matt. He looked nothing like the man in the corporate videos. He arrived on a rainy Monday morning, suitcase in hand and nerves tight in his chest. The hotel foyer was quiet, but the kitchen buzzed with noise. He was expected at 6 a.m. sharp. "Hey, you the new Buffett guy," a woman called without looking up. She was stacking trays of croissants. "Yeah, Matt," Caleb said. "I'm Whitney, breakfast lead. You're early. Good, we need help." Her voice was clipped, but her eyes weren't unkind. She handed him gloves, pointed to a corner, and kept moving. The kitchen was fast. Eggs, bacon, fruit trays, pastries. Everything had to be plated perfectly. He was put on fruit duty, slicing melons and arranging strawberries. A tall man walked in, barking orders. "Whitney, we're behind again." "Because we're short 2 hands like I told you yesterday, Devin," she snapped back. Devin, the location's kitchen manager, frowned. "Excuses, make it work." Caleb stayed quiet. He didn't want to draw attention, but he noticed the tension every time Devin walked by. Whitney and the others seemed to work harder when he wasn't in the room. Around 7 a.m., the buffet opened. Guests trickled in, businessmen, families, an elderly couple in matching blue cardigans. The food was good. Caleb helped restock trays, wiped the counters, and caught small things: how Whitney offered gluten-free options without being asked, how she gently helped an older man get a coffee lid on. By 10:30 a.m., the breakfast rush ended. Caleb helped bring the remaining trays back. "All right," Devin called. "Trash the leftovers. Lunch starts in 2 hours. Caleb blinked. "Wait, you mean all of it?" Devin looked at him like he was stupid. "We don't reuse Buffett food, health code, toss it." "But some of this hasn't even been touched." Caleb pointed at a tray of untouched muffins. Devin shrugged. "Doesn't matter, hotel policy." "This much food every day?" Caleb asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Every day," Whitney said quietly. "Hurts to see it. I tried asking if we could donate it once, got shut down." "By who?" District said no, liability issues. She glanced around. "Just do it quick. Devin gets mad if it's not gone by 11. Caleb stared as tray after tray hit the trash. Whole fruit bowls, muffins, bacon. A pan of scrambled eggs barely touched. He felt sick. They filled 3 black trash bags, then 4. Later in the break room, Caleb sat with Whitney. "Doesn't that feel wrong to you?" he asked. She nodded. "Every day I think about it. There's a shelter 2 blocks away. I see folks digging through our dumpster sometimes. I hate it." "Why stay?" he asked. She smiled, tired. "I like the guests. I like the team. Most of them anyway." She didn't name names, but Caleb picked up on it. Devin barked orders all day but never lifted a pan. He blamed Whitney when things fell behind. When a dishwasher accidentally broke a plate, Devin made a scene in front of guests. "Useless," he called him. Caleb pulled the young man aside later. "You okay?" The dishwasher, probably 19, nodded but looked embarrassed. "He does that a lot." "Has anyone ever reported him?" The kid gave a small laugh. "To who?" "He is management." That night, back in his cheap hotel room across town, Caleb couldn't sleep. His back ached from bending over trays and hauling trash. But what kept him awake was the waste. So much food dumped like it meant nothing. And good people like Whitney having to watch it happen. The next morning, he came in early again. Whitney handed him gloves without a word, but there was a hint of a smile. By Thursday, he knew who worked hard and who didn't. He saw Devin take long breaks in his office while Whitney juggled 4 tasks at once. He saw a front desk agent, Hannah, quietly cover for a guest who lost their room key without charging the fee. He watched one of the cooks, Louis, go out of his way to help a guest with dietary needs, even making a fresh pan of eggs from scratch. And every morning, more food hit the trash. By Friday, Caleb had seen enough. By Friday afternoon, Caleb's hands were raw from scrubbing pans and hauling supply bins. The sleeves of his uniform stuck to his arms, and his legs were sore from the constant up and down of restocking the buffet line. Still, none of that weighed on him like what he'd witnessed that morning. A full tray of smoked salmon, untouched, dumped into the trash without hesitation. It was the 5th tray of the shift. He hadn't said anything yet, but the decision was made in his head. That night, instead of going back to his motel, he walked the 2 blocks to the shelter Whitney had mentioned. It was a squat brick building with flickering lights above the side entrance. The director, a short woman named Ava, met him in the foyer. "We feed about 100 people a day," she said after he introduced himself under the same alias. "We're always looking for donations, but restaurants are scared of liability." "What kind of food do you usually get?" he asked. "Mostly dry goods, canned stuff. Sometimes a bakery drops off bread." "But hot meals? Rare, and that's what people really need," he nodded slowly. "If a hotel had extra, untouched food from a buffet sealed, never left the line, would you take it?" Ava studied him. "If it's within safe temperature range and hasn't been served to guests, absolutely. We've got the equipment to reheat and sanitize it. We just need consistency and written clearance." He left with her card and a folder of paperwork she said most donors used. Back at the motel, he sat on the edge of the bed, flipping through the forms. The answer had been there all along. People just hadn't bothered to look hard enough. The next morning, he showed up early again, this time helping Louis prep the omelet station. "You've done this before," Louis said, watching him crack eggs one-handed. "Grew up cooking," Caleb replied. "Big family." "Learned fast or you didn't eat," Louis laughed. "Sounds like my house." They worked in sync for the next hour, flipping omelets and chatting between orders. Caleb noticed how Louis never rushed anyone, even when the line grew. He treated each guest like they were the only one in the room. A woman in a wheelchair came up and Louis bent down slightly eye level. "Tell me what you'd like, and I'll bring it to your table, no problem." She smiled, touched by the gesture. Later that morning, Devin walked in, holding his phone, not looking up. "Louis, that vegan order still not done?" Louis looked confused. "I wasn't told about a vegan order." "Well, the guest complained, make it fast." "I'll take care of it," Caleb said, stepping in. Devin's eyes narrowed. "You're not here to take over." "I'm here to help get food out," Caleb replied evenly. Devin scoffed and walked off, tapping away on his phone as he left the kitchen again. Caleb turned back to the stove, jaw tight. His patience was thinning. By 11, the breakfast line had closed and the food was being cleared. Caleb asked Whitney to hold off for 10 minutes. "I need to take temperatures first," he said quietly. She frowned. "Why?" He lifted one of the trays. "If this is within safe range and untouched, I've got a place that'll take it." She stared at him, eyes wide. "You serious?" "I talked to them last night. They can reheat and distribute it, no cost to us, no risk if we do it right." Whitney glanced toward Devin's office. "He'll say no." "Then let him, but give me 5 minutes first." She nodded once and joined him, checking the internal temperatures on each tray. They documented every rating, snapped photos, and sealed the leftovers in clean containers. Caleb loaded them into one of the hotel's unused catering bins and carried them himself to the shelter. By the time he returned, Devin was waiting by the prep station. "Where the hell have you been?" "Dropping off food," Caleb said calmly. Devin crossed his arms. "We don't give away product." "You're not authorized." "I cleared it with a licensed shelter, documented temperatures, sealed containers, no guest contact. That's legally compliant." "You're a temp," Devin snapped. "You don't make those calls." Caleb stepped closer, but someone had to. Devin's face turned red. "You're done." "Get your stuff. I don't deal with insubordination." Caleb nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll go. But I want you to explain to the general manager why you've been leaving early every day this week, why you've been clocking out late without working, and why 2 staff members told me they're afraid to speak up around you." Devin blinked. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I do," Caleb said, voice steady. "And you're going to find out exactly how much I know." He walked out, not toward the locker room, but straight to the lobby. He asked the concierge to page the general manager, a man named Malcolm who had been on vacation until that morning. When Malcolm arrived, Caleb asked for a minute in private. They stepped into the business office. "I'm Caleb Everett," he said, pulling off his glasses. "Owner of this hotel and 6 others." Malcolm's face went slack. "Sir, I didn't know, I didn't want you to. I've been working here all week. I've seen waste, mistreatment, and a manager who shouldn't be in a leadership role. I need full access to staffing files and performance records." "Right now?" Malcolm moved quickly. Within 10 minutes, Caleb had documentation showing that Devin had 3 formal complaints in the last year, all quietly buried by a former HR coordinator. A dishwasher had filed one after being publicly berated. Another from a front desk associate cited repeated verbal aggression. Both were dismissed without follow-up. "Effective immediately, Devin is terminated," Caleb said. "Escort him off the property." Malcolm didn't hesitate. Whitney was in the break room when Caleb returned. She looked up, confused. "Where's Devin?" she asked. "Gone," Caleb replied. "Fired, for cause." She stood, stunned. "That really just happened," he nodded, "and it's just the start." He met with the kitchen staff that afternoon and revealed who he really was. The room went dead silent. Some mouths dropped open, others stared in disbelief. Lewis was the first to speak. "That's insane. You've been working with us all week." "I needed to see the truth," Caleb said. "And I did. I saw dedication. I saw people doing more with less. I saw systems that penalize good work. That ends now." He turned to Whitney. "You should have been leading that kitchen. You're getting promoted to operations lead, full authority over Buffett management." Her mouth opened, but no words came. "You've already been doing the job," he added. "I'm just making it official." He faced the rest of the team. "We're setting up a formal donation pipeline to local shelters. Temperature tracking, logs, safe handling, all of it. No more waste. And you'll get bonuses for food saved, not just food sold." He paused. "I'm also launching an internal reporting platform. Anonymous, direct to my office. If someone abuses their position again, I want to know." After the meeting, he walked the property with Malcolm, noting other areas in need of change. Inconsistent shift coverage, outdated kitchen equipment, poor communication between departments. None of it was shocking, but now it was undeniable. That night, Caleb rode the elevator to the rooftop dining deck. The view stretched across the city, lights twinkling, the river winding in the distance. He watched for a long time. He'd built a company to serve people. Somewhere along the way, convenience had replaced care, but not anymore. From now on, the mission was clear. Fix what was broken, reward what was working, and never look away again. Sunday morning began quietly. A light mist hung in the air outside the hotel, and the lobby speakers played soft jazz as Caleb walked through the main corridor, no longer in his uniform. He wore a navy windbreaker jeans and a plain white polo, unbranded but crisp. Staff nodded cautiously as he passed, unsure how to address him now. He offered brief greetings and kept walking, heading for the service wing. In the back hall, Whitney was already prepping the cold stations. The overnight dish crew had barely finished, and she looked like she hadn't slept more than a few hours. "You're not on schedule," she said without looking up. "I'm not here to work the line." "Oh," she said, pausing mid-slice, You're actually here as the boss now, he nodded once. How many hours have you worked this week? Her hands stilled. Including today? Yes, 62. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I can't ask anyone to keep doing that. I didn't say you asked me, she replied. I just didn't want the morning to fall apart. I'm hiring 2 more full-time kitchen staff. One will report to you directly. You'll have final say on scheduling. She turned, blinking. You serious? I don't say things unless I mean them. For a moment, she didn't speak. Then she wiped her hands and gestured toward the prep log. Then we've got some gaps to fix. The afternoon shifts are the worst. One person ends up doing 3 jobs. He walked with her through the prep area while she explained the recurring breakdowns. The ice machine had been limping for weeks. The hot holding cabinets fluctuated in temperature. The slicer jammed every other day. None of it had been escalated properly. At 10 that morning, he convened a full staff meeting in the largest conference room on property. Chairs filled quickly front desk, housekeeping, kitchen, maintenance, and concierge staff all filed in. Caleb stood at the front with Malcolm, who looked more alert than he had the day before. Thanks for coming in on short notice, Caleb began. I know this week's been unusual. I won't waste your time. He stepped forward, voice steady. Some of you know me as Matt. The rest of you now know I'm Caleb Everett, the man who owns this property and 6 others like it. I went undercover here because this location, Riverway, has been under review for poor performance. I didn't want reports, I wanted reality, and I got it. He scanned the room. I saw people fighting to keep things running with too few hands. I saw people stepping up without being asked. I also saw patterns of mismanagement. Some of those patterns ended Friday. More changes are coming. There were a few exchanged glances. A young woman at the back crossed her arms. Caleb continued. Here's what's happening immediately. First, meal waste. We now have a formal food donation partnership with the Riverway Shelter. All untouched, temperature-safe buffet items will be sealed and logged. Whitney will oversee the process. If you have questions, ask her directly. A few heads turned in her direction. Second, staffing. We're hiring 2 new full-time kitchen staff, 1 full-time housekeeper. And we're converting a part-time front desk position to full-time with benefits. Staffing levels will match actual demand, not just budget projections. The arms of the young woman at the back dropped slightly. Third, behavior. If you're in a leadership role and you use that position to belittle, intimidate, or exploit staff, you will be removed. No warnings, no coaching plans. We're beyond that. A few people shifted in their seats. This isn't about being perfect, it's about being decent. This is hospitality. If you can't treat your coworkers with respect, you can't be trusted to treat guests that way either. Before he could continue, a voice spoke up from the center of the room. It was Lewis. What about reporting stuff? If someone sees something wrong, how do we say something without it getting buried? Caleb nodded. There's now a direct reporting line to my office. Anonymous if you want. I've already reviewed 2 suppressed complaints from this location. That won't happen again. The room was quiet for a long beat, then a voice from the left. I've got something to say. It was a housekeeper, maybe in her 50s, wearing a faded uniform and compression gloves. She stepped forward slowly. Last month, I was assigned to clean the 4th floor VIP suites. I'm not supposed to do those are double pay, but the supervisor said the regular was out and they needed help. I did it. Took me 5 hours. When I asked about the extra pay, she laughed. Caleb didn't interrupt. She said if I didn't like it, I could go home. I didn't report it. I need the job. He turned to Malcolm. Who was that supervisor? Malcolm hesitated. I believe that would be Clarissa. Where is she now? She's scheduled on afternoons. She'll be in at 2. Caleb looked at the woman. You'll be paid retroactively for the suite cleaning, including the double rate. And Clarissa will be removed from any supervisory duties effective immediately pending full review. The housekeeper nodded once and stepped back. No smile, just relief. Caleb turned back to the group. This is how it works now. If someone lies, steals credit, or abuses their role, there are consequences. If someone goes above and beyond, that gets recognized. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket. This week, I watched 3 employees do exactly that. He looked up. Lewis, you adapted to every challenge with professionalism. You made guests feel seen. That's the job. You're getting a performance bonus and a new title, Guest Dining Liaison. You'll be trained on guest service coordination, and if you're interested, we'll sponsor your Serve Safe Manager certification. Lewis's jaw tightened. He nodded once but said nothing. Hannah at the front desk, Caleb continued. You showed empathy under pressure, that matters. You're getting a raise effective next pay period, and we're enrolling you in our leadership prep program. She blinked rapidly but didn't speak, and finally, Whitney, you've held this place together, quietly, relentlessly. That ends today. You're being promoted to Assistant Director of Food Operations. Full salary benefits. You'll help design the new standard operating procedures for all 7 properties. The room stayed silent. I didn't come here to fix everything in 1 week, but we're not going back to how it was. If you're here to work, you'll be supported. If you're here to take advantage of others, you'll be gone. He folded the paper, tucked it away, and met their eyes. Go do your jobs and do them like they matter. The room slowly emptied. Some walked in pairs, whispering. A few stayed behind, lingering near the door. One of them was the young woman from the back row, the one who had crossed her arms earlier. She waited until the others passed before approaching. I wasn't sure if this was all talk, she said. I don't do talk, Caleb replied. I'm Brielle. I work laundry. Nobody ever mentions us. You're mentioned now, she nodded once. We're short 2 people, been that way for months. Give Malcolm the names of who's been covering the most. I'll make sure they're compensated, and we'll post the open roles tomorrow. She hesitated. Thanks. As she turned to leave, Caleb looked toward Malcolm. We're not patching holes anymore. We're rebuilding. Malcolm gave a short nod. Understood. Caleb walked back through the service hall, past the kitchen, past the storage room where he'd started the week slicing fruit. He paused at the exit door leading to the loading dock. A man in a navy apron was lifting sealed trays into a shelter van. It was the first official donation delivery under the new system. The driver offered a wave as he slid the door shut. Caleb nodded in return, then stepped into the sunlight. The first days after the staff meeting were a slow recalibration. No grand announcements, no instant morale shift. Just a quiet tension as people waited to see if the promises held. Monday morning, Caleb returned to the Riverway Hotel dressed plainly, his presence now understood but still unfamiliar to most. He spent the early hours in the back office combing through shift logs, equipment requests, vendor invoices, things he hadn't personally reviewed in years. He wanted to see what had been approved, what had been ignored, and who had been asking for help long before he stepped through the door. Malcolm entered just after 8 carrying 2 binders under his arm. Requested maintenance records and food waste reports going back 6 months, he said, setting them down. Caleb didn't look up right away. How long was the fryer running without a proper filter? 3 months, Malcolm admitted. Lewis submitted 2 repair requests. Both marked low priority. By who? Devon. Caleb closed the folder. We're not going to patch around negligence. From now on, anything that affects safety or efficiency is flagged to you and to me. Malcolm nodded. Agreed. Also, Caleb continued, I want a full departmental audit. Every time a complaint was ignored, every time a shift was covered unofficially, I want it logged. Not to punish, to rebuild the right way. By noon, the first new kitchen hire had arrived. A seasoned breakfast cook named Rochelle had been fast-tracked through onboarding. She was sharp, direct, and didn't waste time asking where things were. She found them, cleaned them, and got to work. Whitney eyed her from the prep table. First day and you're already reorganizing the spice shelf. Can't cook if I don't know where the garlic is, Rochelle replied without looking up. They exchanged a glance, then got back to it. Caleb spent the afternoon checking in with departments that hadn't seen him directly: laundry, maintenance, and night audit. Most were skeptical. especially the night crew, who had heard about the changes but assumed they wouldn't affect them. "You're telling me we're getting a second desk agent on overnights?" asked Marcus, a tall man with dark circles under his eyes. "That's the plan," Caleb said. "You've been covering the whole lobby, security checks, and guest calls solo for how long?" "5 months, Marcus replied. "Since they cut the second shift." "Not anymore," Caleb said. "You'll have someone beside you by next week, and you're getting a hazard bonus retroactively." Marcus looked away for a moment, then leaned back in his chair. "I've worked nights at 3 hotels. Never once had someone from the top even ask what the lobby looks like after midnight." "Maybe that's the problem," Caleb said quietly. By Wednesday, the donation process had found rhythm. Whitney and Lewis prepared the sealed trays twice a day, each logged with internal temperatures and timestamps. The shelter van arrived promptly at 11:30 and again at 6. The staff began to take pride in watching the food get loaded, not wasted, not tossed, but used. Rochelle even started prepping a separate tray with extra breakfast sandwiches specifically for the shelter's volunteers. That same day, a new front desk associate named Alina joined the team. She was fresh out of hospitality school, eager but quiet. Hannah took her under her wing, showing her how to navigate the booking system, deal with irate guests, and more importantly when to trust her instincts. "Policy matters," Hannah told her as they stood behind the counter, "but you're allowed to be human first." Caleb overheard it while grabbing a coffee from the lobby bar. He didn't interrupt. He just kept walking, taking note. That afternoon, a situation surfaced that tested the new boundaries. A dispute broke out between Clarissa, the former housekeeping supervisor who had been reassigned to standard cleaning duties, and a new hire named Mira, who was on her second shift. Caleb arrived just as voices were raised in the linen corridor. "I told you to do the corner suites," Clarissa shouted. "That's not what my board says," Mira replied, holding up the shift chart. "I was assigned floors 2 and 3. You think I care what that thing says?" "You do what I tell you." "Not if it's not my job." Clarissa stepped forward, her tone sharp. "Little girl, you're new here, watch your mouth." Caleb's voice cut in. "That's enough." Both women turned. Clarissa's face shifted instantly from anger to forced control. "I was just giving her direction." "No, you weren't," Caleb said. "You were trying to intimidate her, and you crossed a line." Clarissa's eyes narrowed. "She's being insubordinate." "She followed the posted schedule, which you don't have authority to override." "And referring to any employee with condescension based on age or appearance is unacceptable." Clarissa said nothing. "You're dismissed," Caleb said. "Permanently." She stared as though waiting for him to walk it back. He didn't. She turned and walked off without another word. Mira stood still, unsure. "You handled yourself well," Caleb said. "You did the right thing." "Honestly," she said, "I didn't think anyone would step in." "Then we're already making progress." By Friday, the hotel felt different, not fixed, not perfect, but calibrated. The tension that had hovered throughout the halls had started to lift. Whitney had implemented a new prep sequence that cut down early morning chaos by nearly 20 minutes. Rochelle had trained 2 existing staff on proper cold storage procedures, which prevented a recurring mold issue in the walk-in fridge. Hannah and Alina had streamlined guest check-ins by reorganizing the welcome packets and signage. And in the back dock, a new storage cooler had arrived, funded by corporate, installed overnight to keep donated food fresh until pickup. Just past sunset, Caleb walked through the rooftop bar. It was fuller than usual. A jazz trio played near the railing and guests sipped wine under string lights. He spotted a familiar face near the edge. Lewis, off-duty, sitting with his younger brother. Caleb approached slowly. "You two enjoying the view?" Lewis stood quickly. "Sir, sorry, relax," Caleb said. "Enjoy your night." Lewis hesitated. "I didn't know if we were allowed to hang out up here." "You've earned it," Caleb replied. "This place belongs to all of us now." They exchanged a quiet nod before Caleb stepped away. Later, as he crossed the lobby, he noticed something new. A handwritten note taped beside the employee bulletin board. It read, kitchen donation count, 214 meals saved this week. Keep going? No signature, no announcement, just a quiet marker of progress. He stood there for a moment, taking it in. Then he turned and walked out into the night. No fanfare, no send-off, just the knowledge that the hotel would open the next morning a little stronger than the last.